What's up, everyone? Nito here, and I want to do a quick update on how my league start has been going in the Affliction League. So I am actually playing with the new Void Sphere of Rending, which is actually a Void Sphere that has no cooldown, so you can just kind of cast it as much as you want, unlike the regular Void Sphere, which has a 10-second cooldown. So the differences between Void Sphere of Rending and the main regular Void Sphere are basically it has a much smaller area. So you really need to scale some AoE for this to feel good. And it also has a much shorter duration. So the base duration is only 2 seconds. But basically you throw it out, it pulses every zero point 0.4 seconds, damaging everything in the area. It draws enemies in, and it also hinders them. And then it deals physical damage converted to chaos. So I am playing an Occultist, and I don't even have Uber Lab yet, so currently we just have Withering Presence, Void Beacon, and Profane Bloom. And then our tree is looking a little interesting. We're pathing all the way down here to Blood Magic, and that's because we're utilizing the brand new Warlock of the Mists Ascendancy from Affliction, and this is giving us Sanguimancy, which gives skills cost life instead of mana, and 50% increased life reservation efficiency of skills. So as you can see here, I'm reserving half of my HP, and I'm using Petrified Blood, so we are a low life build. And we are also utilizing Cannibalized Faith, which adds physical damage to the cost based on the life cost of your spells. So Void Sphere costs 184 life, so it's getting quite a bit of flat physical damage added from that. And ideally that can go even higher, close to like 300 life cost. And the idea is that with Void Sphere, it lasts a couple seconds. I believe mine's got a duration of around 5 seconds. Yeah, 5.06 duration. So you really only have to cast it once, so you're not like spamming it constantly and losing life from the high cost. So we actually try to scale the life cost as much as possible, and that way we get lots of extra flat fizz. And then the other node here that's really important is Crimson Power, which removes all energy shield, and you gain maximum life instead of maximum energy shield from equipped armor items at the cost of -6 max life per level, which kind of negates some of the default character level scaling. So if we come over to my gear, I finally got it so that my resistances are capped, and it's a league start, so nothing's perfect here, but I will show kind of the general idea. Basically, we are utilizing Breath of the Council, which is sort of the perfect weapon for this build. It gives up to 100% increased chaos damage, but it also has really high flat physical damage, and that's perfect because we can use that with Spellblade support, which essentially makes the adds spell damage to the spell based on the flat damage on your main hand one-handed weapon. And we also get some AoE from this. We also get 40% increased skill effect duration, which again is really important because Void Sphere of Rending has a much shorter duration. So this is kind of just like an incredibly good weapon for this particular skill when you're using it with Spellblade. And then for our shield, we're actually using Broken Faith. And if you remember, this thing says removes all energy shield. So our energy shield is always 0. And that is an enabler for Broken Faith because it gives 100% increased global armor while you have no energy shield. And it also gives you Unholy Might, which is 30% physical damage as extra chaos damage while you have no energy shield. And then lastly, it gives Create Profane Ground instead of Consecrated Ground. And what Profane Ground does is it just lowers resistances, all resistances of enemies standing on the ground by, I believe, 10%. And that includes Chaos Resistance, which is pretty hard to lower on in general. Like, there's only a few sources of reducing Chaos damage. Like, you don't have things like Exposure for Chaos, for example. You really only have stuff like this node from Occultist, Profane Ground, Aspect of the Spider is another one that can do it. and then Despair, Curse. So just every bit of like chaos resistance reduction we can get is really powerful. So that's why we're using this. And lastly, it gives us chaos damage leached as life. So this is also an extra source of recovery for us. Unfortunately, it does not have a great energy shield or armor value on here, so we can't really benefit that much from Crimson Power in terms of the life we get from it. But, you know, you kind of can make up for that on some of your other items, such as Crown of Thorns, which is actually has no level requirement, but has almost 300 energy shield on it, which is massive, and that's basically converted into 300 flat life. And this is giving us Pain Attunement, which is for low life builds, you get 30% more spell damage, so that's obviously huge. And ideally, I will eventually get this corrupted to have the socketed gems have 90% cost multiplier on them. And then I'll socket all of my auras in here because, you know, we're reserving our life pool, and life reservation efficiency is much harder to get than mana reservation efficiency. So you kind of have to path all the way down to this cluster here in order to get life reservation efficiency. And you get it from the reservation mastery as well. But this is the only place on the tree you can actually get life reservation efficiency. And blood magic, you also get 10% more life, more maximum life from that. Even though this is basically already covered by the Warlock Ascendancy. So if you look at, where is it? Sanguimancy basically does the same thing as blood magic, except it gives you that extra increased life reservation efficiency, but it doesn't give you the 10% more. So you can just stack them and get both benefits. So that's pretty much our Ascendancies. Then we are also using Ming's Heart, which gives 58% Fizz damage as extra chaos damage. That's obviously pretty massive. And we are using a Mark of Submission with Despair in it. This is going to curse enemies on hit with Despair, and that's going to proc Profane Bloom on everything. So this is going to help a lot with clearing, because kind of the skill on its own is not amazing at clearing. It's okay once you get some AoE on it, but it's nothing special. And then in addition to Void Sphere of Rending, I'm also trying the new Bladefall of Volleys. And this is basically just Bladefall with extra volleys and 10% more damage per volley. And the reason we're doing that is we just have this Unleash set up to get some extra single target damage. So you kind of plop your Void Sphere down, and then while it's ticking away, you can kind of just throw out some Bladefalls as needed. And Bladefall is a pure Fizz skill, but because we have so much Fizz to Chaos conversion and Fizz added as Chaos, it's actually doing mostly Chaos damage, as you can see here. And that's partially because we're using the Chaos Mastery that gives 40% physical damage converted to Chaos. And ideally, we can get another 20% Fizz conversion to Chaos on our gloves, on our Glove Implicit. I don't have it yet, but that's the goal. And that will fully convert Void Sphere from Fizz to Chaos. So yeah, down here we're also taking Iron Will, so we're doing some strength scaling. You can see we have Utmost Might just for all that strength. Because strength is life and strength is damage, so it's nice to have. And yeah, that's pretty much where we're at currently. So far, it has been working quite well. Once I kind of got things balanced and online, I actually did level like right from level 30 something with Void Sphere. And, there were definitely points throughout the campaign that it was clunky to level with, but I just wanted to kind of get the true leveling experience, so I did it anyways. But I do also want to say, like, for low life builds, this node right here is so good. 4% from one node life regeneration while on low life, and since we're obviously always low life, it's just always active. So this cluster is really incredible for low life builds, and it also helps you just sustain the life cost from blood magic, because again, it's like a pretty high life cost. And then you can also take infused flesh here, which is giving you 30% recoup and that's actually enough to completely negate the life loss from Petrified Blood. Because Petrified Blood, you know, when you take a hit, 40% of life loss below half-life is prevented, and then the rest of it is lost over 4 seconds. So this 30% actually can negate at max level with quality, I think. Yeah, you need quality on here. I don't have it yet, but once this is fully leveled and fully qualityed, you will fully just negate the damage, the degen, essentially, from Petrified Blood. So that's a nice tech, and normally Petrified Blood builds are kind of in this area of the tree, so like being able to come all the way up here and just grab it on the tree is really nice. Otherwise, you can get it normally on some jewelry, but, you know, my rings are both unique right now, so obviously can't get it there. I picked up this chest for 20C, which is pretty good. It has a lot of armor and a good amount of energy shield on it, and just some resistances. And because it has no life mods on it, we can use the Life Mastery that gives 15% increased max life. And then also, because it has a bunch of energy shield on it, that's all getting converted into life because of our Warlock Ascendancy. So you kind of want a really nice armor energy shield, or even just pure energy shield, depending on what you're doing, with the Warlock of the Mists Ascendancy. If you're going to go for Crimson Power, it's pretty good. And yeah, the rest of my gear is kind of just as much energy shield and life and resistances as I could get. It's nothing to write home about. So those will be upgraded soon, hopefully. And then we just have a pretty basic spell damage, cast speed, life, dexterity amulet, and we're just anointing Fangs of the Viper, super cheap anoint, but it's got 20% chaos damage, 20% fizz damage, some extra move speed, and some extra dexterity, which I needed, so just a nice cheap anoint there. The goal for the build, or like kind of where I plan to go next, is actually to use a Glorious Vanity Jewel with Zibakwa on it, right here. So put it in this slot, and it's going to convert Mind over Matter into Divine Flesh. And so because Ming's Heart has 50% Chaos Res plus the implicit 22 up to 23% Chaos Res, that's a ton of Chaos Res there. And then our Ascendancy is going to get Withering Presence with another 60% Chaos Res. So I'm actually at 72% Chaos Res right now. So it should be extremely easy to cap Chaos Res for Divine Flesh, which, if you don't know what that is, it basically makes 50% of elemental damage is taken as chaos damage instead. But some damage bypasses energy shield. But obviously we don't have energy shield, so we don't care about that part. So that's going to be a really strong defensive layer. And then the other thing I was thinking about is using the Fourth Vow chest, which is going to make armor apply to chaos damage taken. And that should apply to the elemental damage converted to chaos damage taken. So, and because Fourth Vow is actually an armor energy shield chest, it looks actually somewhat similar to this in terms of just the base stats on there. You still get a bunch of life from it too, which is cool. And it has a bunch of regen on there as well. So it should be a really strong chest once I can get that Timeless Jewel set up. So that's kind of what I'm working on now in terms of where I want to go with the build next. So I'll just kind of show you what it looks like in a map real quick. This is a Shore Tier 6 map. I'm not that far into mapping. I'm only level 83. So far it's been pretty good.
When I'm ready, and not before. Oops, clumsy move.
So, you know, you kind of throw the spear out and just leave it there, and then anything nearby is gonna just get pulsed on and just die. And with the explosions from being an occultist, it's pretty smooth for this stage of the game, I would say. I don't think it's particularly good at doing legions, but we'll try it. Oh, okay, I should have seen that coming. Oh yeah, so aura-wise, we're running Zealotry, Petrified Blood, Determination, and Vitality. Zealotry is because it will create consecrated ground when you hit rare or unique enemies, and that works with the shield to create profane ground instead. And one thing I did notice about... Oh, wow. A lot of scarabs. Okay. One thing I did notice about the sphere, so unlike something like Hydrosphere or some of the other orb skills, the initial cast of it does not actually deal damage. You have to wait 0.4 seconds for it to start pulsing. So you can't really spam it for extra DPS, which you can do with stuff like Hydrosphere. So that's just something to consider. And that's another reason that I kind of use Bladefall as an additional damage setup. There's probably other physical spells you could use as well, or even chaos spells. Like I know there's some of the new chaos spells are more hit based rather than damage over time based. And currently, I'll also note, currently I'm not doing anything with poison on this build. It's all entirely hit based. But you could probably throw some poison in here if you wanted to. Most of my scaling currently is coming from spell damage, and spell damage does not scale poison. So, yeah. You could totally do a poison setup with this, though, if you wanted. So there was the boss. The nice thing is, for a boss, you can just kind of, like, drop it off screen and, like, be way over here while the boss is dying. It's a nice playstyle, and it's good for things like Sanctum or Ultimatum or stuff where you just want to be moving constantly. And you just kind of drop it, run around, let it do its thing, suck enemies in, and then, yeah. So anyways, that's the build. That's what we're working with on day 2 of the League. Hopefully it will continue to get even better. Thanks for watching.